The healing is a much different experience, I'm assuming. Can you walk us through that?
Okay.
And then also
I don't do any healing at all. All I do,
okay.
and I'm very firm about this, because I think...
What is dowsing? If you could just explain that to, somebody who may know a little bit about it, or this is the first time they're ever hearing about it.
I think most people's image of dowsing is water dowsing, water divining.
I can imagine that finding the practitioners can't be too challenging, correct? Because I think that everyone now is, I think that there are people out there, right? When that kind of like the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Like, do you believe that there are good, solid practitioners out there that?
It depends. In the UK and in Europe, not a problem. In the UK, specifically London,
Hello, Thrivers. Welcome back to Thrive with Sharon podcast. And this is a continuation of season 2. I'm so enjoying this podcast because it has really represented a lot of the way that I've moved throughout the world, which is in very divinely guided ways. And today I have to say that this individual who our lives intersected many years ago, it was definitely divinely guided, because there's no way that logically someone who is living in Monaco with somebody who is living in New Jersey would have such kindred spirits. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you to today's guest, and it is Elizabeth Brown. Elizabeth is an award-winning professional member of the British Society of Dowsers and Hay House author of internationally best-selling book, Dowsing, The Ultimate Guide for the 21st Century. Elizabeth has been a dowser for more than 32 years with clients in over 30 countries. She works privately and in support of doctors, dentists, health professionals in identifying causative factors in ill health, particularly cancer, ME, and conditions that have no orthodox label. Goodness, we have so much to talk about there. Her groundbreaking work in the field of causative diagnosis has transformed many hundreds of lives. And as an aspiring teacher, she is passionate in her belief that anyone can dowse. For more about her work, please go to her website, causativeddiagnosis.com, and we will definitely include that in the show notes. So, Elizabeth Brown, I am so excited to have you today. Welcome.
I'm so excited to be here, and thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my goodness. Yes, it was just, we were talking about this before we pressed record, and on the one hand, my human brain says, my logical brain says, we should have done this a long time ago, but we all know that it's all in accordance with, divine timing, right? And that's the only timing that really is perfect. And that's probably the only thing that's really perfect in our human existence is divine timing and divine intervention. So I first want to reference your book, which I got years ago and read, and then have since we have planned on this conversation, started reviewing it again. And it's just one of those books that is very timeless because it is such incredible information. But I first want to start off talking about dowsing, because I know that for a lot of our community, and welcome to the community, and everyone, welcome Elizabeth Brown, please embrace her in your life now. What is dowsing? If you could just explain that to, somebody who may know a little bit about it, or this is the first time they're ever hearing about it.
I think most people's image of dowsing is water dowsing, water divining. An old man with a stick walking along looking for underground water. I mean, that's the traditional. There are many illustrations and woodcuts going back a few hundred years showing exactly that. Either that or looking for underground minerals and tin and copper, which they did in Germany in the 1500s and in the UK as well. But it goes back, I mean, much longer than that. And I mean, I maintain that every indigenous tribe in the world actually knows how to dowse, and they don't necessarily use a stick or some device or a pendulum. They're just connecting to a field of information. I mean, that's what we're doing, is connecting to the field or the quantum field. But of course, it takes many different forms. I mean, about people with pendulums accessing information, but it's been used for centuries, for as far as we definitely know. But I think it goes back probably thousands and thousands of years. And traditionally, well, now every utility company in the country has got a dowser or a diviner on their payroll, looking for leaks. Yeah, absolutely. In London, they use dowsers to find leaks underground, or lost cables, or broken cables, and oil companies use dowsers to site wells. The army traditionally have used dowsing for many hundreds of years. There's a wonderful picture of somebody in the Thai 8th Army looking for unexploded bombs and mines as well, with very, very long dowsing rods standing well back. But yes, and then of course with doctors and homeopaths particularly, dowsing on remedies or dowsing on what's in the best interests of their patients. So it takes many different forms, but what it essentially is a means of finding out without using the five senses. And really what you're doing is extending consciousness and connecting to a field and retrieving information with directed and deliberate intent. So I'm asking a question, or I'm looking for water, or I'm looking for a telephone cable, or I'm looking for underground diamonds or gold, or whatever I want to do, and I'm connecting to a field of information and the answer. And I maintain people sort of douse sort of all day long, but don't realize they're doing it, and they're not doing it with directed and deliberate intent. What they're doing is maybe when the phone rings, and they'll think, oh, that's probably Bill or Jane, and somebody or they haven't spoken to for a long time flies into their head. And because we're all connected to the field, we're all always picking up information. It's like when you're driving along and you're driving a car, and you suddenly have this sort of feeling to slow down around the next corner because it's a blind bend, and there in the middle of a road when you've gone around the corner is a horse or some roadworks. It's I mean, people call it sixth sense. It's actually not. It's the seventh sense, is connecting to the field. What Einstein called spooky action at a distance. It's the entanglement, the quantum entanglement.
Yes.
So is that sort of give an idea?
Absolutely. I think that's incredible. And I didn't know that utility companies had dowsers on their payroll. That
it's been very controversial a few years ago in the UK because some skeptic, I'm going to be polite, skeptic saw a man in a field with a pair of dowsing rods, and they were looking for something. It was actually water, I think, or a broken water main, and did some inquiries, and it turned out to be one of the main water companies in the UK. And they were so horrified, they were so shocked that a water company might use something as primitive as witchcraft.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, truth be known, most of the dowsers for water companies are big burly men who have, you know, background in engineering or geology, or and they're absolutely brilliant at it. You know, they work with such speed. There's actually a water dowser called George Applegate who died a couple of years ago, and he was sort of one of my heroes. You know, sunk 3,500 wells with a 99% success rate. I mean, extraordinary man. And so people don't realize it. And I've approached one, in fact, I did for the book, I approached some utility companies, and they wouldn't admit it because they don't want, this is why you don't hear about it, because they don't want to be, you know, sort of humiliated and in the press and accused of using witchcraft. But the reason they use it is because it works. I mean, it works. And I don't think I would have been doing this for, well, working professionally for over 20 years if it didn't work. Is that I was thinking about this last night. I've never advertised, ever. I mean, it's all word of mouth, and it's word of mouth for a reason. It's because I get results. And in fact, that was one of the things that George Applegate used to say: the only thing that counts with dowsing is the results. You know, so if you get results.
Yes, that's 100%. And that's really interesting because, you know, with regard to the marketing aspect and the advertising, you know, I work with a lot of individuals who are looking to scale their careers or transition from one more traditional, maybe professional career endeavor into something that is maybe a little bit less traditional. And so they're really focused on the marketing aspect, and they're really looking to pour a lot of dollars into the marketing aspect. And, you know, so they'll say, well, so how did you know, get to the point where you are being able to do this full time and what have you? And I said, word of mouth. I mean, because when you are the living, breathing example of your work, and you have become the vessel to be that, like
Yes.
you attract your clients, you attract the people who you're meant to work
Yes.
with. And it can be, you know, circling back to something that you nuanced, it can be a little bit challenging. I mean, so for the big burly guy who's working for the utility company, who has all of this, you know, many years, you know, higher education, all of these things, right? To then spend a large percentage of their day or their career dowsing, right? And to have to kind of prove yourself. And I loved your prologue, and I just wanted to read your prologue because I think that really speaks to this, right? And I think it's also going to speak to the individuals who are kind of straddling timelines right now, right? Where they're in one place and they're very much seeing these things and they're living this way, but they're also feeling this pull and this knowing, and have despite intention or not, these experiences of the divine, and also being in this field, right? In literally being in multiple realities all at the same time. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's, yeah. So I'm just going to quickly read this. Annie was sleeping peacefully in the bedroom of her pretty terraced cottage. It was 3:15 a.m. And around her streets, a fashionable London suburb also soundlessly slumbered. The roar of a vehicle speeding down her quiet side street suddenly shattered the silence. Braking abruptly, it drew to a halt immediately outside her home. Jolted upright by the noise, she deftly moved to the window, now very much awake. Now, who hasn't had those experiences at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, right? Concealed by the wall panels, she watched a man leap out of an unmarked white van and begin pacing up and down directly in front of her gate. Her stomach involuntarily tightened. Oh no, she thought with trepidation, we're about to be burglared. She reached for her phone, her eyes remaining glued to the ominous figure. She watched, all senses on alert, as he continued to pace. Peering at his form now, made eerie by the lamplight, she remained frozen, trying to anticipate his next move. With a start, she realized he had something in his hands, obviously the tools of his trade. Love that. She watched as he handled them with ease of someone who knew what he was doing. Riveted, she followed his shadow as he wandered back and forth, brandishing a pair of pointed metal objects. Then, upon reaching her neighbor's gate, he stopped abruptly in his tracks. What on earth is he doing? And then it hit her. Her trepidation melted into amusement, and the dowsing rods in his hands began to spin rapidly. Incredible. At this signal, a door opened in the white van, and a second man leaped out, brandishing an aerosol can of paint. He sprayed the outline of a blue square on the pavement directly underneath the spinning rods. Job done, the two men jumped back on board, and the anonymous white van sped off into the night. Annie returned to the comfort of her bed with a wry smile on her face. The only thing on her mind as she drifted off to sleep was, whoever would believe her story?
I was at a dinner. I'm pretty sure it was when I was a speaker, sort of a pre-dinner speaker, and the woman sitting next to me told me that. I thought, oh, this is gold. This is absolute gold. Please, can I use this story? And she said, yeah. I mean, this was actually Annie. She said yes, and she'd seen it all happen. But apparently, there'd been a leak for months and months, and it was next door's water leak because they're having construction work done, and various workmen had come and they dug holes and then filled them in and dug another hole, filled them in and dug another. She said it had gone on for quite a while, and obviously in the end they sent out a dowser and they found it absolutely where it was, and that was repaired. I mean, it was that was that fast. I thought this is just brilliant.
It is brilliant. It is it's a perfect introduction to your book. Oh my gosh, into the whole concept. And the thing that I loved about the story of Annie is that there was no like, what is he doing? Did that just happen? You know, I can't believe that somebody would even be doing that. Like, it was so, there was a knowing there for her. There was just a knowing, like, oh yes. And energetically she connected with that. But she was also aware of the humanness of which we live in right now, of this kind of, you know, straddling two different worlds, right? Yeah. Of who is going to believe me in my world?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're living in those times.
Yes. Yeah. And I know, there's a lot that you are really, you know, we were talking about the fact that you are quite busy. Your schedule is full, we'll say it that way. So tell me your thoughts on that.
I mean, I'm always busy, but particularly at the moment, I suppose I should really explain what I do with dowsing. But
yes,
at the moment, I'm getting so many people, and I think they're being prompted by the times that we live in, and the shifts, the huge shifts in consciousness going on the earth, and it's pushing truth, it's pushing things to the surface, it's pushing all those things coming up to the surface in order to be healed, because we can't take it with us. And people are being, I think it's inner promptings thinking, oh, they must be really, I must get this done, or I must sort this out. And I helped them sort it out. But I was, in the beginning, the way although I'd done many different sorts of dowsing, and if you can see I'm not sure, can you see the horse behind me, the white horse on the wall? That's the white horse of the in England, the Channel Tunnel going to France. There's an escarpment there, and that white horse is up on the escarpment just as the Eurostar train goes down into the tunnel. And it's the Millennium White Horse, and I actually helped the artist, it's 300 feet long. I helped the artist cite that on the energy lines. And if you stand on the heart chakra of the horse or the eye of the horse, there's a huge flow of energy coming up through it. So I did that, but I also worked looking for going to people's homes and optimizing their homes, both in terms of electromagnetic pollution, sick houses, if you like, and geopathic stress and disruption. And I did that for several years. But then I kept being pushed all the time to go into the health field, of which I'd been researching, like so many of us, through a health crisis. And since my mid-20s, I'd been researching health. And it was just very interesting. When I used to go out in the field on site to people's homes, and we work through the problems that were in the houses, sort out the energy, rebalance all the energies, and clear and protect from any particular detrimental environmental energies and electromagnetic pollution. And I would always phone up 2 weeks later and to see how people were, how are you feeling now? Because most people with houses like that, they simply don't sleep. And some people say, oh, fantastic, I slept from that night, and it's been amazing. I'm sleeping for the first time in years. Or well, I think I feel better. Yeah, my rash is gone, but yeah, I think I do. And some, no, don't feel any different at all. No, can't feel any different. So basically, I don't know why you came out, sort of. And so I thought, well, there's got to be some way of quantifying this. There's got to be some way of measuring it. So I started to take health readings, because once you put a scale in place, a pre-agreed scale with you, your higher self, whatever you're tapping into, you can calibrate anything. You can put a number on anything. So I started to calibrate their health, their immune system, their absorption of nutrients from their food, because in electromagnetic pollution will actually compromise absorption of nutrients from food, and several different readings. And I started to monitor them when I got back, and some I could see got better, and some didn't, and they were correlating with what people were telling me. And then I thought, well, what is causing that illness? What is causing their sickness? And that's how it started. And then 2 very key clients with cancer, and in fact, cancer's become my speciality, pushed me to say, what caused my cancer? What caused it? And because I'd been researching health since, oh dear, my goodness me, 1980, something like that, I knew causative factors in ill health, particularly chronic metabolic disease. And so I started to pioneer a system. And when I first started, it was all in my head. And then as the cases became more and more complex, which they are now, I mean, incredibly complex, multi-strains of illness, or many different underlying causative factors in terms of what people have been exposed to, and resulting in a huge variety of, I'd say, what the medical profession call autoimmune disorders, which always have a cause. And they just became more and more complex. So in the end, I had to put it in a more let's say, structured way. And I'm a bit structured I'm a bit anal actually with my structured, my perfectionism. So I had to put it down, and to the point where I began to teach it as well. I'd have taught the process, which is called causative diagnosis. So it's identifying the causative, contributory, and trigger factors behind either a pre-diagnosed condition or a set of symptoms, or that have a label or don't have a label, or just a very disparate set of symptoms that don't seem to match up, but often have the causative, same causative factors. And this really just developed hugely. So I started to work. Eventually, I was called in by many doctors and clinics and dentists wanting to know what was going on inside a bone, or and it developed to what it is today. And I do, you're right, I have clients in over 30 countries, and I work at distance, obviously not being able to travel anymore. But the benefits of this, and I know you understand this, the benefits are that you're actually, you're not doing what allopathic medicine does, which is just managing symptoms. What you're doing is actually getting to the root underlying cause.
Yes.
And by doing that, you're bringing about a true and profound healing, a proper healing, not covering up. And I think more than anything, yes, of course, cancer's incredibly important, but more than anything, I see this in skin conditions, because people have been in hell for 5 years, 10 years, one woman 20 years, her whole body covered, and on a rounds of antibiotics or steroids. And then and people go to their doctors and say, well, what caused this? And the doctors, well, wait, I don't know, nobody knows, or we think it might be genetic, or and it's so unsatisfactory. But once you know exactly what caused it, then you can target the right treatment. I mean, to the people. I've got one client who 15 years, her whole body was covered, and it went in 2 weeks. Once she knew what to do, I mean, extraordinary. And clients who no longer have cancer because they've addressed all the underlying causes. It's a very powerful process. But what it does, and particularly the woman who had breast cancer that I write about in the book, the benefit to her was she felt for the first time in the driving seat, she felt that she was not at the mercy of a dozen tests or CT scans, or we'll try this, we'll try this drug, or try this drug, or try that drug. She actually knew exactly what she had to target, what she had to do, who she needed to go to, what she wanted to, what she needed to supplement, what parts of her lifestyle that needed to be changed. Right. And she said it was so empowering, because I know what to do.
Yes.
It's no longer a kind of shot in the dark of and in fact, last week or the week before, I had a young man who came, who'd been given a diagnosis, and the number of doctors and specialists and consultants and even psychiatrists he'd been to spread over 4 pages. And every single one was, they don't know, or they're not, or they think it's this, and they stopped going to all these specialists. So let's hope now this is the end of his agonizing wait to try and start living his life again.
Yes, and I definitely am praying for that for him, for sure. I find it so fascinating, because I you're right. I do resonate with a lot of what you're saying, and especially root cause healing. And I think that, I don't know about you, I'm curious about how we can connect to the aspect of the human psyche, because again, like in Annie's case, who's going to believe me, and how am I going to be able to surround myself with the supportive team that I need of people so that I can really exist in the way that I can allow the healing to take place. Because I'm assuming that some of the healing isn't, oh, you were taking amoxicillin and you really should be taking this other medication, right? It's the healing is a much different experience, I'm assuming. Can you walk us through that?
Okay.
And then also
I don't do any healing at all. All I do,
okay.
and I'm very firm about this, because I think I also walk a very fine line. This is not a medical diagnosis. I'm not medically qualified. All I'm doing is giving people information. All I'm doing is identifying causative factors behind their condition. So that I'm not doing any healing at all. What I'm doing is really like being a clearinghouse. So, for example, let's say it's breast cancer, and the main causative factor is there's you for each person. There's a completely unique recipe, individual to them. Okay, so everybody's there's with cancer, there's never one cause. There's usually one or two or three or four causes. There may be a contributory factor, there may be a trigger factor. In that, there's going to be certainly, it falls into three very, very broad categories. And one of them is a crisis of toxicity. One is which there are many hundreds of things underneath that. One is a crisis of nutrition. And the third thing is what I would call inappropriate mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual programming. I mean, inappropriate sounds a bit cold, but you know what I mean, because it covers so many different things. It can be this life, it can be past life. I mean, once you have the ability to tap into someone's energy field, you can go back 10 lifetimes or 100 lifetimes. You can look at a cause that was inherited epigenetic expression on the father's side from the grandmother. There is no limit to the information you can retrieve from the information field or the client's personal information field. And so it's not limited in any way. This is what I'm trying to say. It can be anything. But say we've got an inherited epigenetic expression. One factor might be high levels of aluminium compounds in the breast tissue. One might be electromagnetic fields from keeping a mobile phone and cell phone in the top pocket. And a trigger factor might be a very bad relationship with the husband, and a contributory. Let's say a trigger factor could be a death of a parent, and being in grief, because grief is actually one of the causative factors I do see in common across many different cancers, certainly. And so once we have all those causative factors, then I put together an action list which tells the client exactly what they need to do in order to return to their health back to balance, or the optimal health and well-being for them. And that's all I'm allowed to claim. And so the action list might be lifestyle changes. It may be, for example, not using a deodorant with aluminium. It might be lifestyle, leaving your cell phone in your purse, in your handbag. It might be severe nutritional deficiencies and then there would be all the suggested particular manufacturers and types of nutrition. It may be working with say a BWRT therapist in order to help with the grief. It might be, so everyone has their own totally individual, personalized only for them, action list of what they need to do. And then I send them on their way at that point. But I do support them for 6 months to ensure that they do respond to this action list that they have. And I take their health readings monthly. So if they're working with a practitioner and their lifestyle changes, I will take their health readings every month. I don't need to speak to them, I do it at a distance. And we can see the progress that they're making, which they find, I think, hugely encouraging, because normally when you start to change the body from ground upwards, you wouldn't necessarily feel the changes in the beginning if you suddenly started to absorb selenium where you went before, or
Right.
your cells are healing, or maybe there's a parasite that's now being cleared from the body. You don't necessarily feel that, oh yeah, I can feel that.
Yeah.
But when they see the health readings, and the health readings are very detailed these days, they can say, oh yeah, that's moved and that's going up. My immune system has gone from 37% to 55%, you know, and it's an encouragement to keep going, because it's very difficult when you've had a long term, especially ME or chronic fatigue syndrome, a long-term illness. You don't actually sometimes know that you're getting better because you've been ill for so long. I mean, that plus a skin condition, you can actually start to see that. Well, sometimes it gets worse before it gets better, but you can actually see that. But the health readings also help with that too, because you know the body is starting to repair itself from ground upwards.
Yes, and I can totally relate to some of the, chronic fatigue syndrome and skin issues. I mean, those were things that very early on, I think you had mentioned, circling back to something that you said, that you had mentioned, one of the catalysts or the pushes for you to start to endeavor into the health and wellness area in that respect was in with your own needs, right? And that was the same thing for me. And so, and it does, and and I think, just thinking back to, because I was in my young 20s at the time, last year, that it would have been so nice to have, well, not even just nice, it would have been so impactful to have someone to take the baseline reading, help to be the directive towards, this is the right direction to go. These are the things that would be helpful for you to augment and supplement, or whatever it is. And then to track the progress. I mean, that to me is profound, because, listen, our healthcare systems across the world, it's not just in the US, our healthcare systems across the world are also in crisis, right?
Yes,
we do not have the human power, and not manpower, not woman power, a human power, to be able to serve all of these things that are starting to come up. They're like flags, right? They're all of these different new things that are appearing, seemingly new, but really all at the root of it, at the core of it, have very similar themes, right? So to have someone like you, to me, it's a necessity, because there's, sorry, more people are coming your way. But because I just think that this is, it appeals to both aspects of healing in the quantum, of healing in the metaphysical world, right? You're bringing together, and because I'm a mystic, I also study, I study the true nature of what true science and medicine and being a doctor was, which was 7 pillars of, different aspects of addressing the health, right? Where it's plant medicine, it's dealing with something bigger and greater than yourself, astrology, the study of astrology, and where your specific imprint and fingerprint is, and also, the other physical aspects of our body and how they work, and our environment and what we surround ourselves, and so on and so forth. And so most Western medicine doesn't really, they're practicing a portion. They're practicing one pillar of what, now you are speaking to all of those pillars, and you're able to pull all of those things together. And I can imagine that finding the practitioners can't be too challenging, correct? Because I think that everyone now is, I think that there are people out there, right? When that kind of like the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Like, do you believe that there are good, solid practitioners out there that are?
I think that it depends. In the UK and in Europe, not a problem. In the UK, specifically London, so many fantastic practitioners now in terms of holistic health, and many who are both qualified doctors but holistic practitioners who marry the two incredibly well. What you call functional medicine, and I think we call in the UK ecological medicine. Yes, and I've made it my business to know over all the years those exceptional practitioners that work with what I would call vibrational medicine or energetic medicine, particularly encoding their own remedies on an energetic level. So really exceptional, but forward-thinking men and women who are really breaking new ground and are, years ahead of their time. So lucky to know some of those. When I'm working, for example, around the world, Australia or Canada, through Europe, I think I get a bit of help from the universe, because names seem to drop in my box, but what I will do is calibrate the practitioner in the client's best interest. So I know nothing under 10 out of 10. Sometimes it's 12 out of 10. When it's life-changing, it's 20 out of 10, which is the universal way of having a joke. But practitioners around the world, I do, or sometimes the client has their own practitioner who they work with. I've got a pretty formidable list of holistic dentists now. I mean, I think in America or North America, biological dentists, they're called biological dentists. So really, really important. However, I do a lot of work in the Middle East. I have a lot of clients in many countries through the Middle East. That's much more difficult, because holistic medicine, in terms of homeopaths, osteopaths, naturopaths, etc., is not necessarily encouraged. There's maybe a handful of people. Europe is, again, Europe's not so bad. Australia's great. America's not a problem. So I do I do rely on the contribution from the universe guiding me along for that, because you've got to find the right practitioner. There's no point. The client didn't come to me to have to keep banging away at it, same old. They want results, and I have to find people who can bring about those results.
Yeah. Well, I've been a witness to your, you're dowsing the appropriate practitioner. It's incredible. I mean, of all of the points in the world, you literally are accessing, you're open to all of the points in the world, and it points to one individual, which is really, really incredible. I mean, it's very powerful when you think about it, right? And yes, and it really is the universe speaking through us. And
absolutely,
and I read in your book, and you reference so many different, quantum metaphysics and individuals who were right on time, but in many ways ahead of their time, right? In their understanding of really finding a way to, through intentionality, through energy, through understanding the knowing beyond the knowing, right? And how that works. And I love your reference to really dissolving as much as possible the ego or the fact that you think that you know.
Yeah.
And I have to say, as a practitioner in all different areas, right, in quantum metaphysics being one of them, like that is something that it's a daily practice, right, to be of that and to be able to check in that way. But I really am excited to hear your response to that, because I know you spent a lot of time kind of breaking that down in the book, as far as really being the vessel and being the instrument, and not judging or questioning.
I mean, absolutely. And all the old boys, and sadly, I think most of them now have died, but they all the old water dowsers can't have ego, got to leave ego behind. They were humble. True dowsers are really humble, because they know they're, I would say to the universe, thank you for enabling me to do what I do, because I don't think I'm doing it. I mean, I'm carrying it out, but I couldn't do what I did without the backup and the extraordinary stories. But, and again, going back to George Applegate, he used to say, your ego will trip you up. It does actually trip you up if you go through it. And I employed a dowser once for finding water, and this particular dowser that was is challenged by their ego, and it went horribly wrong. You can't do spiritual work from ego. I mean, that it's not just dowsing, it's any spiritual work. You simply can't. You have to stand aside. I don't think you have to banish your ego. I love what Eckhart Tolle says. You make friends with your ego, and you have a giggle at your ego. Oh God, did I really do that sort of thing? And don't do it again. And it's that sort of, but without the support of the universe, I wouldn't be able to do this work. Absolutely wouldn't, because I'm connecting into it. I'm connecting in to consciousness. Yes. And consciousness is truth. And a lot of people who come to workshops and who I train, they find it quite difficult to make that to disconnect, to have no input in the answers, to have absolutely no vested interest. And this is where many dowsers go wrong, because you're sitting there dowsing going, does my boyfriend love me? And
yes
you're holding right, and you'll be going, please say yes, and you'll get the yes answer, because your voluntary movements have overridden the level of consciousness that you've actually connected with. So you have to stand back. You have to completely disconnect. The most you can allow yourself is sort of a slightly interested curiosity. That's what I would say, a curiosity, and that's what most dowsers find the most difficult. I know I'm influencing the answers. So that's just training. You just have to train yourself to not be influencing the answers, to completely extend consciousness, and then step back the ego, and then just watch what happens. Observe what unfolds.
Yeah, to be a witness of that is to get to the point where you can be a witness. Like you said, to your point, it's a practice. It's a daily practice. And it's also not just like, oh, well, I got it once or I got it twice, so therefore it's always going to happen. It's like, to be in the practice is then to be in the preparedness of being a witness. And then when you're a witness to the infinite. It's incredible.
Yes.
You know, one of the spiritual masters, Dr. Levery, who I study with, and he is an amazing teacher, he said, you know, 1% of our lives is what we see. 99%, and 99% is what we haven't seen and what we don't know. Think about
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And so for me, it's like, well, I want to always be expanding, because I know, not that I have a fear or an urgency, but just there's a knowing that we're if it's there, that means that it's meant to be. It's meant to be part of. We're meant to be part of it and connect to it in ways, because we're infinite. Everything is infinite. Truth is
I
infinite.
don't think we can't, double negative. I don't think we can't not connect with it, if you see what I mean. Because we are connected.
Yes.
You know, we're there. It's
Yes.
just the awareness of it. It's just the awareness of knowing that we're connected to all that is, will be, ever, all that was, is, and ever will be. We're connected. Yes. We are it.
Yes.
And if people understood, because, you know, most of life and school and further education and parental conditioning is about disempowering us. And if people understood how powerful they really and truly are, dowsing would be like the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
You know, it's just actually about belief. And I'm sorry about keep saying George Applegate. I don't know why he keeps coming up today, but you know, you have to, your belief that you can do it is in direct proportion to the results that you get. That's what he used to say. You have to believe you can do it, because it's like an athlete. If you don't believe you can do it, you won't. All the best athletes and leaders of industry, captains of industry, have such belief in themselves, and you have to do that in order to be able to douse. Because again, you'll just override your very natural connectivity to the field, the quantum field. You just override it, and it won't happen for you. That's so important.
It is so important. I love the fact that you bring in the concept of belief, because I think that that's been humming into us this entire conversation, right? In different ways, where I think that, you know, there is this presentation of the fact that this is a very, very powerful tool. And while it is widely used, as to your point in examples, there still is an aspect of, if you don't believe it, then it's not going to exist for you, right? But then on the other side of belief, and especially, you know, because I love working with high performers, right? So athletes and, you know, all of that. And so like you said, there is always this belief like, well, I never thought that I couldn't, right? But I think that the thing that creates the long-term success is the alignment with truth.
Yes.
And so I love the fact that you brought into this all of these different areas where we've really been, gosh, this is kind of, I don't even want to say this word, but for lack of being, I don't want to take a lot of time trying to think of a different one, conditioning, right? False conditioning, or maybe things that are not really in alignment with what your truth is, that it can be, for me, I find that I'm very decided, I'm very intentional about never, ever, ever disempowering anybody's belief. However, I always try and bring it back around so that they're the authority in their truth.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? And I'm hearing so much of that from you today. And that's just so comforting, and also just empowering and powerful. So important, I think, for us to really, I think that, you know, there's so many wonderful, amazing takeaways from today, but you know, what I want to underscore for individuals is to find their way to their truth, right? Always believe, even if it doesn't make sense to believe, right? Makes no logical sense to do this thing, but we do it, right? And then we realize why. Maybe in the moment after we do it, maybe it's a week later, maybe it's a month later, maybe it's a lifetime later, but we do because we know, because we're aligned with truth, our truth. And to be empowered, and how powerful that is.
Yes.
So
And I think these shifts are all about standing in your own truth. The earth shifts. Everything that is going on earth, on the earth plane at this time, especially the last 2 years, it's a push for people to stand in their own truth and to empower themselves and understand who they truly are.
Yeah. And I want to acknowledge that that journey is not always easy.
I know.
Yes. I can speak from my own personal experience, which has been part of my karmic experience in this lifetime. But, you know, but yeah, I'll also walking alongside others on their journey to their own truth. There's so many different things that could make it challenging, but it's worth it.
Oh, yes.
So
isn't that what we're here for? I mean,
I believe that. I believe that, and it's so refreshing to know you and to know this is the core and the essence of who you are. Yeah. So wonderful. It's so lovely. It's lovely to be in your energy and to be sharing space today. It's, you know, I know across the years, we've always joked about, you know, being at a dinner party with some of the characters that we know, and and how fun it would be. And
yes.
I look forward to those days. I look forward to when that happens for sure. But I'm grateful for your time, and we're rounding things out, but I did want to just hear a little bit, if you have anything you want to share with regard to, you know, how your thoughts on going from surviving to thriving, and what there are a lot of people who are in all of the different spectrums right now. Like what would you want, if you felt like was important, you know, I just want to make sure that people know this, or that you share a little bit about your belief?
I could tell you personal experiences, but I'm not sure that's how helpful that is. I mean, I went through a childhood where someone set out to disempower me, and I simply wasn't equipped for life at all. And then I went in and married a man who was very violent, and I was a battered wife. So I know about thriving. I know about surviving, but I wasn't thriving. I was surviving, but I had no idea of my own power. I simply had no idea. Nobody had ever taught me. Nobody had ever shown me. Certainly not from family. And I think, just to let people know, you are extraordinary. It's all there. You have everything. This is one of the reasons that I believe everyone can dowse, because we all have the same equipment. It's just accessing it and bringing it out and encouraging it and helping people to flourish. And as they say, we're all walking each other home. And I think that, you know, we're all here to help each other do that. I just know how powerful that you are, and find find the people who can help you access that power. And yeah, access that power so you can flourish.
Yes.
Really.
Yes. Yes. Oh.
I'm grateful to everyone who, all my teachers, both sides of the pond, because I lived in America for 6 years, who helped me on that journey. If anyone of them listening to this, thank you.
I hope that well, I'm sure that they are, if they're here or in Skywide. Yeah, they're definitely tuned in. I believe that people, especially teachers and mentors, are tapped in and they know. Yeah. Elizabeth Brown, it has been so lovely having you today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, really.
Yeah.
My absolute pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much. And I really do hope that if anyone is curious, it's a Hay House book, correct? This is through Hay House? Yeah. Dowsing and Causative Diagnosis. And it's just a lovely read. I love your very practical way of sharing information, AKA organized, which is definitely something that I'm working towards. But also just the lovely way that you can read this from so many different places in your where you might be within your consciousness, and you're going to get something.
Yeah,
that's what
I aimed to. The book was actually driven by students. They asked me to put something together for them, and I thought, well, I don't really know enough. Or maybe, and I was thinking like a 30-40 page pamphlet. and that happened. This happened. Hay House are waiting for book 2. I need to get on with that one. But it was driven, and because it was driven by students, I think I tried to encompass all of them, whatever stage of their journey they're at. I tried to do that.
Yeah,
it's been an honor for me, and it's just been wonderful speaking to you directly after lots of exchanges on social media.
Yes. The feeling is mutual for sure, and I hope that you do come back again. And I look forward to so many different beautiful things in the future that we can share together in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, it really has. And to everyone else who's been listening, please check the show notes. I'm going to put all of the links to be able to be in touch with Elizabeth. And she's just such a lovely individual. I hope that you do take the time. And she actually, her Instagram page is just filled with beautiful quotes and images and just lovely lifestyle things, which just speaks to all of my Venus energy all of the time. I love it. It's just so wonderful. So everyone, thank you for tuning in. And until the next time, peace and love, and please continue to find your way to be in your own power.